The silvery glow of the observation chamber's monitors bathed Director Solon Arcus's face in cold light as he leaned forward, hands clasped behind his back. His eyes narrowed at the scene unfolding on the largest screen, a lone human figure moving through dense emerald foliage, her research equipment strapped awkwardly to her back. Dr. Halsey continues to deviate from standard observation protocols. An analyst remarked, the disapproval evident in her tone. Arcus nodded curtly. As she has since her arrival at Vega 9, note it for the report, but continue recording. The Arcturian Observation Consortium didn't establish this outpost for researchers who follow predictable patterns. On the screen, Dr. Mira Halsey paused to adjust her equipment. The lush moon's vibrant ecosystem surrounded her, a riot of violet-tinged vegetation and twisting vines that seemed to reach for her with every breeze. Vega 9 represented the furthest extension of Arcturian research territory, and its thriving biosphere had yielded fascinating discoveries since the establishment of the remote outpost 3 standard years ago. Mira's breath fogged in the unexpectedly cool air as she consulted her handheld scanner. Something had triggered the bioactivity sensors overnight, a large organism exhibiting unusual thermal signatures. The consortium had cataloged most of the moon's megafauna, but this reading suggested a creature they hadn't yet classified. Elevation dropping ahead, she murmured into her recorder. Temperature decrease of 7 degrees in 50 meters. Unusual microclimatic pocket forming in ravine system. The camera drones following at a discrete distance transmitted her words directly to the observation chamber. Observer Leah Venn made notes on her tablet, her fingers flying across the surface. Dr. Halsey shows characteristic enthusiasm for anomalous readings. Venn commented, predicted behavior pattern confirms psychological assessment of curiosity overriding caution. Arcus waved a hand dismissively. Standard xenobiologist profile. They're all the same. Intellectually brilliant, emotionally invested. It makes them effective researchers, but difficult to manage. On the screen, Mira had reached a rocky outcropping overlooking a small valley. The temperature had dropped further, her breath now forming distinct clouds with each exhalation. She adjusted her thermal jacket and paused, her head tilting as she detected a sound beyond the range of the recording equipment. Something's injured, she whispered, almost to herself. Large organism in distress approximately 40 meters northeast. Venn straightened in her chair. She shouldn't approach an injured predator species. Protocol dictates. Let her proceed. Arcus interrupted, his interest piqued. This could provide valuable behavioral data. The observation team watched as Mira descended carefully into the ravine, her movements measured and deliberate. The temperature continued to drop as she approached a cluster of crystalline formations that glittered like frozen tears in the filtered sunlight. The sound became audible to the observation team now, a low, keening whine punctuated by labored breathing. Mira rounded a large crystal formation and stopped abruptly. The camera drones adjusted their position, revealing what had caught her attention, a creature unlike any previously documented on Vega 9. It lay sprawled across a bed of frosted vegetation, its silvery fur rippling with each labored breath. Nearly 3 meters long, it resembled a feline predator, but with 6 limbs and elongated cranial structure. Most striking were the crystalline growths protruding from its spine, similar to the formations surrounding it, as though the creature was somehow connected to the anomalous microclimate. Magnificent, Mira breathed, lowering herself to a crouch at a cautious distance. In the observation chamber, analysts scrambled to classify the creature, running its features through the xenobiological database. No match, Venn reported, her voice tight with excitement. This is a previously unrecorded species. Appears to be an apex predator. Another analyst added, note the musculature and dental structure. Those claws could shear through standard armor plating. Arcus frowned. Dr. Halsey needs to maintain distance. Mark this as a Class 3 predator until we can fully assess capabilities. But on the screen, Mira was already moving closer. Her scanner extended before her. The creature's eyes, opalescent and clouded with pain, tracked her movement. A low growl emanated from its throat. It's all right, she said softly, her voice carrying clearly through the recording equipment. I'm not here to harm you. The growl intensified as she took another step. She's violating at least 7 safety protocols, Ven muttered, already documenting the infractions. Mira set down her scanner and slowly removed her pack. With deliberate movements, she extracted a medical kit and placed it on the ground before her. Dr. Halsey returned to a safe distance immediately. Arcus ordered through the communication link. On screen, Mira touched her earpiece, acknowledging the command. Then, with a quick movement, she disconnected it and set it aside. She's disconnected comms, an analyst reported unnecessarily. Arcus's face hardened. Note for disciplinary review. They watched as Mira continued her careful approach. The creature's growl became intermittent as weakness overtook aggression. Now close enough to assess its condition, Mira could see the source of its distress. A crystalline growth had fractured and penetrated its hide, causing a deep wound that leaked silvery fluid onto the frosted ground. You're bleeding out, she murmured. Those crystal formations are part of you, aren't they? Not environmental at all. In the observation chamber, analysts updated their notes frantically. Symbiotic relationship with crystalline structures, one suggested. More likely an evolved biological feature. Another countered. Note how the formations mirror internal skeletal imaging. Mira opened her medical kit and extracted a universal coagulant spray, a standard item for field researchers dealing with unknown biologies. The creature's eyes tracked her movements, its growl now barely audible. This will help stop the bleeding, she explained, as though the creature could understand her. It might sting, but it won't harm you. She extended her hand slowly. The spray canister held loosely in her fingers. The creature's muscles tensed, and several analysts gasped, expecting an attack. Instead, after a tense moment, it lowered its massive head to the ground in what appeared to be surrender to its fate. Mira moved forward and, with steady hands, applied the coagulant to the wound. The creature flinched, but made no aggressive movement. When she finished, she retreated several steps and observed. The wound requires more extensive treatment, she recorded, having retrieved her datapad. Creature shows signs of dehydration and malnutrition. Estimate it's been injured for approximately 3 local days. In the observation chamber, the debate had already begun. We should extract Dr. Halsey and send a containment team. Ven argued. This creature represents an unknown variable. Arcus shook his head. Negative. The opportunity to observe first contact with a new apex species is too valuable. Continue recording. On screen, Mira had made a decision of her own. From her pack, she extracted a ration container and a water purifier. The creature watched warily as she filled a collapsible bowl with water and placed it within reach before retreating again. Hydration first, she narrated. Once trust is established, I'll attempt to provide nutritional support. For several minutes, nothing happened. The creature remained motionless, eyes fixed on Mira, the bowl of water untouched. Then, with a grunt of effort, it dragged itself forward and began to lap at the water with a specialized forked tongue. Remarkable adaptation, Mira noted. The tongue structure suggests specialized feeding habits. When the creature finished drinking, it raised its head and regarded Mira with what could only be described as expectation. She smiled and opened the ration container, extracting a protein concentrate bar. This contains basic amino acids compatible with most carbon-based life forms, she explained, breaking the bar into manageable pieces. It should provide emergency nutrition without toxicity risks. She placed the pieces on a flat rock and again retreated. This time, the creature didn't hesitate, consuming the offering quickly. I'm naming you Frost, Mira said softly, a smile playing at her lips. It suits you. In the observation chamber, Arcus sighed audibly. She's naming it, emotional attachment noted. Ven looked troubled. Sir, perhaps we should remind Dr. Halsey that this isn't a domestication mission. The consortium's mandate is observation and classification. Let her proceed. Arcus replied, his eyes never leaving the screen. Dr. Halsey's methods, while unorthodox, yield results. Document everything. This interaction will inform our approach to apex predator species throughout the sector. For the next 3 hours, the observation team watched as Mira gradually gained the creature's trust. By sunset, she had cleaned the wound more thoroughly and applied a synthetic skin graft to protect it during healing. The creature, Frost, had allowed her touch with minimal resistance. As darkness fell, Mira made no move to return to the research outpost. Instead, she established a small camp at a respectful distance from the injured predator. The last image the observation team recorded before switching to night vision mode was Mira sitting cross-legged on the ground, taking notes as Frost watched her with those strange, opalescent eyes. "She's going to stay with it," Ven realized aloud. Arcus nodded slowly. "Yes, and we're going to document every moment. The consortium hasn't had an opportunity like this in decades." He turned to the team. "Establish a permanent observation protocol. I want every interaction recorded, analyzed, and classified." What none of them realized as they cataloged behaviors and drafted reports was that they were witnessing the beginning of a bond that would eventually threaten the very foundations of their civilization. The following weeks established a routine. Every morning, Mira would leave the research outpost with supplies, and every evening she would return with data. Frost's recovery progressed steadily under her care. The wound closed, strength returned, and the creature began to move around the ravine with increasing confidence. Consortium analysts documented every development with clinical precision. They noted Frost's growing responsiveness to Mira's voice, the way the creature would wait for her arrival each morning, and how it began to bring her small prey animals, seemingly as gifts or perhaps a form of reciprocity. The rime claw displays proto-social behaviors previously undocumented in apex predators. One report concluded, the classification rime claw had been officially adopted after analysis of the crystalline formations along the creature's spine. 30 days into the observation, Director Arcus called a special meeting of the consortium's Xenobiological Classification Committee. "The data suggests we may need to reconsider our threat assessment protocols," he began, standing before the assembled scientists and bureaucrats. Observer Ven controlled the presentation, displaying selected footage of Mira and Frost's interactions. "As you can see," Arcus continued, "the rime claw designated Frost has demonstrated remarkable adaptability and intelligence. Most significantly, it shows no aggressive behavior toward Dr. Halsey despite its evident return to full physical capability." "Could this be an isolated case?" asked a committee member. "A single anomalous individual." "Possible, but unlikely," Arcus replied. "Dr. Halsey's observations suggest this is characteristic behavior for the species when approached with non-threatening stimuli." Another committee member leaned forward. "Are you suggesting we reclassify apex predators based on a single case study?" "I'm suggesting," Arcus said carefully, "that our understanding of predator species may be incomplete. The rime claw demonstrates discernment and relationship-building capacities that challenge our existing classification parameters." The debate continued for hours. Some committee members argued for caution, while others saw an opportunity to revise decades of scientific doctrine. In the end, they reached a compromise. The rime claw would be classified as conditionally non-threatening, a new designation that acknowledged both its predatory capabilities and its capacity for non-aggressive interaction. What none of them fully appreciated was how this single classification decision would ripple through Arcturan policy for years to come. 3 months after their first encounter, Mira faced a difficult decision. Frost had fully recovered, demonstrating hunting prowess and territorial behavior that indicated successful reintegration into the ecosystem. According to consortium protocols, her research should shift from rehabilitation to pure observation. The subject no longer requires intervention, Ven reminded her during their weekly review. Standard procedure dictates you should terminate direct contact and establish remote monitoring only. Mira nodded, her expression neutral despite the tightness in her chest. "I've prepared a transition plan. I'll reduce contact gradually over the next 14 days. The consortium appreciates your thorough documentation, Venn said, her tone softening slightly. Your work with the rhyme claw represents a significant advancement in interspecies understanding. What Mira didn't say, what she carefully kept from her official reports, was how deeply she had come to care for Frost. The creature had demonstrated an emotional intelligence that transcended her scientific understanding. It recognized her moods, adapted its behavior to her presence, and displayed what she could only interpret as affection. The separation process proved more difficult than anticipated. Frost seemed to sense Mira's withdrawal and responded with behaviors the observation team classified as distress indicators. It would pace at their usual meeting location, vocalizing in patterns not previously recorded. On the 12th day of the transition plan, Mira arrived at the ravine to find Frost had left an unprecedented offering, a large herbivore carefully laid out at their meeting place, untouched. The observation team noted it as an escalation in gift-giving behavior. But Mira recognized it for what it was, a plea. "I can't keep coming here," she told the creature, kneeling beside the offering. "You understand that, don't you? You need to live as you were meant to live." Frost watched her with those unsettling opalescent eyes, head tilted in what seemed like contemplation. That night, in her quarters at the research outpost, Mira made a decision that would alter the course of her career and, though she couldn't know it then, the security protocols of an entire civilization. She drafted a comprehensive report on rhyme-claw intelligence, emphasizing their capacity for emotional bonding and social learning. Her conclusion was bold. These creatures demonstrate an intelligence comparable to Terra's higher primates, with specialized emotional processing that may exceed human capabilities in certain domains. When she submitted the report, it created an immediate stir within the consortium. Some dismissed her findings as the result of emotional attachment clouding scientific objectivity. Others saw the potential implications for interspecies relations throughout Arcturan space. Director Arcus, ever the pragmatist, recognized an opportunity. Dr. Halsey's work opens new possibilities for non-confrontational approaches to potential threat species, he told the executive committee. If we can establish communication protocols based on her findings, we could revolutionize colonization safety parameters. The consortium approved an extended research mandate, and Mira found herself leading an expanded team focused on rhyme-claw intelligence and communication. For the next 6 months, they documented Frost's behaviors in meticulous detail, developing a rudimentary understanding of vocalizations and body language. What no one anticipated was how quickly the research would be weaponized. 11 months after Mira's first encounter with Frost, the Arcturan Defense Ministry requested access to all rhyme-claw research data. Their interest wasn't in communication or coexistence. They saw an opportunity to incorporate biological intelligence into their defense systems. The rhyme-claw's ability to form non-aggressive bonds with potential threats represents a significant strategic advantage. The ministry's request stated, "Incorporating this understanding into our security protocols could reduce confrontational outcomes by 37%, according to preliminary models." Mira objected strenuously, arguing that the research was being misinterpreted and misapplied. "These are findings about a specific species in a specific context," she insisted during a contentious review meeting. "They can't be generalized to all predator species or applied as universal defense doctrine." But the political momentum had already built. The consortium, always eager for defense ministry funding, approved the knowledge transfer. Within months, Arcturan defense strategists had incorporated Mira's research into a new security paradigm they called adaptive threat response. The core premise was seductively simple. Predatory species respond to non-threatening approaches with reduced aggression. Therefore, Arcturan defense systems should be designed to present non-threatening profiles when confronted with unknown biological entities. Mira watched with growing unease as her careful, nuanced research was reduced to simplistic axioms. "This completely misses the point," she told Venn during one of their increasingly rare conversations. The bond with Frost developed over time, through consistent interaction and trust building. It can't be replicated with automated systems or applied universally. Venn, now promoted to senior observer, offered a sympathetic but pragmatic response. The consortium needs practical applications. Dr. Halsey, your research is valuable precisely because it can be implemented. As the defense paradigm shift accelerated, Mira's relationship with Frost reached another transition point. The Rhymeclaw had established a territory that extended well beyond the original ravine, ranging across nearly 30 square kilometers of Vega 9's surface. Their interactions had become less frequent as Frost integrated more fully into the natural ecosystem. During what would be their final documented encounter, Mira found Frost waiting at their original meeting place, as though the creature had sensed her intention to say goodbye. "I'm being reassigned," she told the Rhymeclaw, sitting beside the now massive predator without fear. "They want me to join the Adaptive Response Division, to help them understand other species the way I came to understand you." Frost made a low, rumbling sound that the vocalization analysis team had categorized as contentment or acknowledgement. The creature rested its massive head against Mira's leg in a gesture that had become familiar over the months. "I don't know if I'll ever come back here," Mira continued, running her hand along the crystalline ridges of Frost's spine. "But I want you to know that what we discovered together matters. It's changing how my people think about yours." What she couldn't bring herself to say was how that change had been corrupted, how her careful research had been weaponized into something she barely recognized. As the twin suns of the Vega system began to set, casting long shadows across the ravine, Mira performed one final act of connection. From her pack, she removed a small device, an advanced biometric tracker disguised as one of the crystalline formations that dotted Frost's spine. "This will help me know you're safe," she explained, carefully affixing the device. "No matter where I go, I'll be able to check on you." The observation team, watching remotely, noted the unauthorized tracker placement but chose not to intervene. Some actions fell into gray areas of protocol, and Director Arcus had long since learned to trust Dr. Halsey's instincts. As darkness fell, Mira left the ravine for the last time. 3 days later, she departed Vega 9 for the Arcturan Central Research Facility, where she would reluctantly assume her new role as Senior Advisor on Xenobiological Intelligence. What no one realized, what no one could have predicted, was that her departure would trigger a sequence of events that would eventually threaten the very existence of Arcturan civilization. The years passed with the inexorable rhythm of bureaucratic progress. Mira's research became the foundation for a completely revised approach to interspecies relations throughout Arcturan space. The Defense Ministry implemented adaptive threat response protocols at every level, from individual colonist training to planetary defense systems. Vega 9 remained a research outpost, though its focus shifted from basic xenobiology to applied intelligence studies. New researchers arrived, cataloging and analyzing the moon's ecosystem with ever more sophisticated tools. Occasionally, they would report sightings of a large, silvery predator moving through the distant forests, but direct encounters were rare. 4 years after Mira's departure, Observer Venn, now Research Director Venn, made a routine administrative decision that would have catastrophic consequences. Reviewing the outpost's biological index, she noted that no confirmed Rhymeclaw sightings had been recorded for over 7 months. "Suggest reclassification to regionally extinct," she noted in the system. Probable causes include habitat shift or natural population decline. The reclassification cascaded through the consortium's databases, eventually reaching the Defense Ministry's threat assessment algorithms. With Rhymeclaws now designated extinct, the species-specific protocols developed from Mira's research were archived as historical data rather than active response parameters. Meanwhile, Mira had risen through the ranks of the Arcturan scientific establishment. As senior advisor, she had managed to temper some of the more extreme applications of her research, insisting on nuance and context in interspecies protocols. She maintained a private database linked to Frost's tracker, occasionally checking the Rhymeclaw's life signs during late nights in her laboratory. 6 years after leaving Vega 9, she noticed something unusual in the tracking data. Frost had begun to move beyond the previously established territory, ranging farther and more purposefully than before. The movement pattern suggested not random exploration, but deliberate migration. Concerned, Mira filed an inquiry with the Vega 9 research station, requesting updated information on Rimeclaw sightings and behavior. The response was bureaucratic and dismissive. Species designated regionally extinct as of standard year 9347. No research resources currently allocated to extinct species monitoring. Mira tried to escalate her concerns, but found herself blocked by administrative barriers. The consortium had moved on to other priorities, and one scientist's interest in a supposedly extinct predator species registered as a minor administrative nuisance. So she watched, alone, as Frost's tracker showed the Rimeclaw moving steadily away from its original territory, its path describing a jagged but unmistakable line towards something Mira couldn't yet identify. 8 years after their last meeting, the tracker data showed something unprecedented. Frost had left the surface of Vega 9. The biometric readings placed the Rimeclaw aboard a transport vessel departing the research outpost, a stowaway hidden somewhere in the cargo hold or maintenance passages. Mira immediately filed an emergency alert, bypassing standard protocols to reach Director Arcus directly. Her message was urgent and unambiguous. Rimeclaw designated Frost has boarded outbound transport from Vega 9. Species demonstrates intelligence sufficient for deliberate interstellar travel. Recommend immediate tracking and containment. Arcus, now approaching retirement and wary of alarmist reports, treated the alert with skepticism. Dr. Halsey, he responded, "Your continued emotional investment in this particular specimen is well documented but increasingly inappropriate. The tracker is likely malfunctioning or has been removed and transported inadvertently." His dismissal was the final bureaucratic barrier. With no institutional support, Mira could only watch helplessly as Frost's tracker showed the Rimeclaw moving from transport to transport, steadily making its way through Arcturian space towards some unknown destination. It was only when she plotted the complete journey that Mira understood. Every jump, every transfer, every seemingly random movement formed a pattern that became clear only when viewed in its entirety. Frost was moving toward Arcturus Prime, the central planet of the consortium, and more specifically, toward the central research facility where Mira had spent the past 8 years. Frost was coming for her. The realization struck with horrifying clarity. What she had interpreted as a bond of trust and affection might be something far more complex, a primal connection that transcended human understanding of relationship. Frost hadn't forgotten her. It had been planning this journey perhaps from the moment she left. With renewed urgency, Mira attempted to warn the Defense Ministry. Her report was comprehensive and detailed, providing tracker data, behavioral analysis, and a desperate plea for preparation. This creature is capable of strategic planning over periods of years, she emphasized. It has demonstrated problem-solving abilities that suggest human-equivalent intelligence in certain domains. The response was crushing in its bureaucratic indifference. "Thank you for your report, Dr. Halsey. As the Rimeclaw species has been classified extinct for over 4 years, and no confirmed sightings have been reported, we cannot allocate defense resources based on tracker data that may be compromised. If you continue to have concerns, please submit them through the proper administrative channels." 9 years and 7 months after Mira first encountered Frost in that crystalline ravine, the unthinkable happened. A remote monitoring station on the outermost defense perimeter of Arcturus Prime reported a breach, a momentary system failure that self-corrected within seconds. The incident was logged, investigated briefly, and dismissed as a sensor malfunction. 3 days later, a similar breach occurred at the secondary defense perimeter. Again, the failure was momentary, the investigation cursory. By the time anyone recognized the pattern, it was too late. Something was methodically testing and circumventing each layer of Arcturus Prime's legendary defense systems that had been redesigned based on the adaptive threat response protocols derived from Mira's research. The first confirmed sighting came from an orbital agricultural platform. Security footage showed a massive, silvery creature moving with impossible stealth through a hydroponics bay. The creature disabled 3 security drones without triggering alarms, then vanished before response teams arrived. Within hours, similar sightings were reported across multiple orbital facilities. Defense Ministry analysts, finally alerted to the threat, reviewed the footage with growing horror. The creature, unmistakably a rime claw, though larger than any documented specimen, was systematically working its way through Arcturus Prime's orbital defense network. Most disturbing was its methodology. The rime claw wasn't attacking indiscriminately, it was targeting specific systems, disabling them with surgical precision before moving on. It showed no interest in human personnel, avoiding confrontation when possible and incapacitating rather than killing when confrontation was unavoidable. Captain Jarek Thane, recently appointed to the Planetary Defense Command, was the first to make the connection. Reviewing Dr. Halsey's ignored warnings alongside the security footage, he recognized the behavioral patterns she had described. "This isn't random," he reported to the Defense Ministry's emergency session. "The creature is executing a deliberate strategy. It understands our defense systems and is exploiting the adaptive threat response protocols, the very protocols designed based on research into its species." The irony was lost on no one. The defense paradigm developed from Mira's research had created vulnerabilities that Frost was now exploiting with devastating effectiveness. Mira, summoned to the emergency session, could offer little comfort. "You've spent nearly a decade implementing systems designed to respond non-aggressively to potential threats," she told the assembled officials. "Frost recognizes these patterns because they're based on our interactions. It knows how to appear non-threatening until the moment it chooses to strike." "How do we stop it?" demanded the defense minister, his face ashen. "I don't know if we can," Mira replied honestly. "We've built our entire defense doctrine around principles that this creature innately understands and can manipulate." The crisis accelerated with terrifying speed. Within 48 hours of the first confirmed sighting, Frost had breached the final orbital defense perimeter. Planetary surface monitors detected an unauthorized atmospheric entry in a remote agricultural sector. The Arcturian government declared a state of emergency. Citizens in the projected path of the creature were evacuated, and military forces established defensive positions around critical infrastructure. The planetary shield, a network of energy barriers designed to prevent orbital bombardment, was reconfigured to contain the threat. Captain Thane, assigned to lead the military response, found himself in the unprecedented position of hunting a single creature with resources typically reserved for repelling invasion fleets. "I need everything you know about this Frost," he told Mira during their first strategy session. "Behavioral patterns, weaknesses, tendencies, anything that might give us an advantage." Mira shook her head slowly. "Captain, what you need to understand is that Frost isn't just intelligent, it's adaptive. The behaviors I documented nearly 10 years ago have undoubtedly evolved. This creature has spent a decade planning and executing this journey. It's learned, grown, and developed strategies we can't predict." "Then what do you suggest?" Thane asked, frustration evident in his voice. "Let me confront it," Mira said simply, "alone." The proposal was met with immediate rejection from military leadership. "Absolutely not," the defense minister declared. "We cannot risk your safety on the assumption that this creature retains some form of attachment to you." "It's not about my safety," Mira countered. "It's about understanding Frost's objective. This isn't random destruction, it's purposeful movement toward a specific goal. I believe that goal is me." The debate raged for hours while Frost continued its inexorable progress toward the central research facility. Military units reported brief engagements, but the creature moved with such speed and tactical awareness that conventional forces proved ineffective. Most disturbing were the reports of Frost's response to the adaptive threat response systems. When confronted with non-aggressive defense measures, the rime claw would initially respond with similar non-aggression, exactly as the protocols predicted. Then, having been categorized as non-threatening by automated systems, it would strike with devastating precision. "It's using our own algorithms against us," Thane realized with growing horror. "It understands the pattern: appear non-threatening, gain access, then attack." 10 years and 1 month after Mira first encountered the injured rime claw in that crystalline ravine, Frost breached the outer perimeter of the central research facility. Alarms blared throughout the complex as security systems detected the intrusion. Mira, having finally convinced the Defense Ministry that confrontation was inevitable, waited in her laboratory. She had insisted on facing Frost alone, arguing that the presence of armed personnel would only trigger aggressive responses. Captain Thane had reluctantly agreed, positioning his forces in concealed locations throughout the surrounding area, ready to intervene if necessary. The minutes stretched into hours as Mira waited, monitoring the facility's security feed on her datapad. Frost moved methodically through the complex, avoiding main corridors and navigating maintenance passages with uncanny precision. It disabled security measures without triggering catastrophic responses, moving with the confidence of a predator that understood its prey's defenses. Finally, the laboratory door slid open. Mira rose from her chair, heart pounding, as Frost entered the room. The rime claw had grown since their last encounter, standing nearly 4 meters at the shoulder, its silvery fur now interspersed with more elaborate crystalline formations. It filled the laboratory doorway with its massive presence. Those opalescent eyes, unchanged despite the years, fixed on Mira with unsettling intensity. "Hello, Frost," she said softly, fighting to keep her voice steady. "You've come a long way to find me." The rime claw made a low, rumbling sound, a vocalization Mira recognized from their time together on Vega 9. It stepped fully into the laboratory, the door sliding closed behind it. With deliberate movements, it circled the room, examining equipment and displays with evident curiosity. "You remember this?" Mira realized aloud. "The environment is familiar to you, like our sessions in the research outpost." Frost completed its circuit of the room and turned its attention fully to Mira. It approached slowly, head lowered to bring those unsettling eyes level with hers. Despite the years of separation, despite the destruction the creature had caused to reach her, Mira felt no fear, only a profound sense of connection that transcended rational explanation. When Frost was less than a meter away, it stopped and made another vocalization, higher pitched, questioning. Then, with a movement that brought tears to Mira's eyes, it lowered its massive head and pressed it against her shoulder, a gesture of affection she remembered from their final days together on Vega 9. "You didn't come to harm me," she whispered, reaching up to touch the crystalline formations along its spine. "You came because I left." The realization struck with devastating clarity. What the Arcturan Defense Ministry had interpreted as an attack was, from Frost's perspective, a rescue mission. The Rimeclaw had navigated interstellar space, breached planetary defenses, and located her within a vast complex for one purpose: to re-establish the bond that had been broken when she departed. The comlink on her wrist chimed urgently. "Dr. Halsey," Captain Thane's voice came through, tense with concern. "The target has made contact. Are you secure? Do we need to intervene?" Mira glanced at the security cameras, knowing Thane and his team were watching. "I'm secure," she replied. "No intervention necessary. The situation is complex." "Explain," Thane demanded. "Frost didn't come to attack me or the facility," Mira said, maintaining physical contact with the Rimeclaw as she spoke. "It came to find me, to reconnect. The destruction it caused was incidental to that goal, not its purpose." There was a long pause before Thane responded. "That doesn't change the fact that it breached our most secure defense systems and poses an ongoing threat." "No," Mira agreed. "It doesn't, but it changes how we should respond." For the next several hours, Mira remained in the laboratory with Frost, documenting their interaction while negotiating with Defense Ministry officials. The Rimeclaw showed no signs of aggression, responding to Mira's presence with what could only be described as contentment. "What you're witnessing," she explained during a video conference with the Defense Minister and Director Arcus, "is the culmination of a decade-long demonstration of intelligence and emotional bonding that exceeds anything in our scientific understanding." Frost navigated interstellar space, comprehended and exploited our defense systems, and located a specific individual within a planetary population of billions. Precisely why it represents an unacceptable security risk, the defense minister countered. If one specimen can accomplish this, others could follow. Or, Mira suggested, it represents an unprecedented opportunity for genuine interspecies communication. Frost has demonstrated problem-solving abilities, emotional intelligence, and strategic planning on par with human capabilities. We've spent a decade misapplying my research, reducing complex behaviors to simplistic algorithms. Now we have the chance to understand what we've been missing. The debate continued for days, during which Frost remained in the laboratory with Mira. The Rhymeclaw showed no desire to leave, content in her presence and curious about the research environment. It demonstrated an understanding of basic experimental equipment, observing Mira's work with evident interest and occasionally manipulating simple tools with its specialized appendages. Captain Thane, initially the strongest advocate for neutralizing the threat, found himself increasingly fascinated by the creature's behavior. It's not what I expected, he admitted during one of his now regular visits to the laboratory. There's a deliberateness to its actions, an awareness. That's what I've been trying to explain for 10 years, Mira replied. Rhymeclaws aren't just predators, they're sentient beings with a different but equally valid form of intelligence. As evidence of Frost's cognitive abilities accumulated, the Defense Ministry's position gradually shifted. The immediate threat response downgraded to contained potential hazard, allowing for more comprehensive study. Director Arkis, nearing retirement and concerned for his legacy, recognized an opportunity for redemption. The Arcturian Observation Consortium has clearly failed in its primary mandate, he acknowledged during a pivotal review session. We observed but failed to understand. Dr. Halsey's original research contained insights we dismissed or misinterpreted due to institutional biases. 3 months after Frost's arrival at the Central Research Facility, the Defense Ministry and the Consortium reached a joint decision. The entire approach to interspecies relations would be revised based on the Rhymeclaw paradigm, as it was now called. Dr. Mira Halsey would lead a new division focused on genuine communication rather than mere classification or control. What we've learned from Frost challenges the fundamental premises of our civilization, Mira told the assembled officials during the announcement ceremony. We built our society on the belief that intelligence can be categorized, predicted, and controlled through rational systems. Frost demonstrated that intelligence transcends our categories, that emotional connection and primal understanding can override our most sophisticated defenses. The implications extended far beyond security protocols. Throughout Arcturian space, colonial administrations began reassessing their relationships with indigenous life forms, seeking understanding rather than dominance. Defense systems were redesigned to incorporate emotional intelligence alongside logical algorithms, recognizing that true security arose from coexistence rather than control. For Mira personally, the crisis precipitated a profound transition. After much deliberation, she made a decision that shocked the scientific establishment, but felt inevitably right. She would return to Vega 9 with Frost. My work here is complete, she explained to a skeptical review committee. The paradigm shift has begun. Now we need to extend our understanding by studying Rhymeclaws in their natural environment, with the benefit of what we've learned through Frost. Director Arkis, in one of his final official acts before retirement, approved the mission. Dr. Halsey's unorthodox methods have proven more insightful than our traditional approaches, he acknowledged. The consortium will benefit from continued observation of her work, albeit from a respectful distance. 1 year after Frost's dramatic arrival at the Central Research Facility, Mira stood on the observation deck of a research vessel approaching Vega 9. Beside her, secured in a specially designed containment area that represented compromise rather than captivity. Frost watched the approaching moon with evident anticipation. We're going home, Mira told the Rhymeclaw, resting her hand on the crystalline formations that had grown more elaborate during their time together. Both of us. Observer Leah Venn, now appointed as liaison between the consortium and Mira's independent research initiative, joined them on the deck. The outpost has been prepared according to your specifications, she informed Mira. Minimal personnel, maximum observation capacity, and the communication uplink you requested. Mira nodded in acknowledgement. And the defense systems? Reconfigured as instructed. Ven confirmed. No adaptive threat response protocols. Basic physical security only. It was a risk, but a calculated one. Mira's new understanding of Rhymeclaw intelligence suggested that Frost's destructive journey had been an anomaly, the result of separation from a bonded human rather than inherent aggression. In their natural environment, with the bond intact, Rhymeclaws posed no greater threat than any other apex predator. As the ship descended toward the landing pad near the original research outpost, Mira reflected on the journey that had brought them to this point. A wounded predator, a compassionate researcher, and a bureaucracy too rigid to recognize the complexity of their interaction. These simple elements had combined to challenge the foundations of an interstellar civilization. "We still have so much to learn," she told Frost as the landing sequence initiated. "About you, about your kind, about the true nature of intelligence itself." The Rhymeclaw made a low, rumbling sound that Mira had come to interpret as agreement. Those opalescent eyes fixed on her with an intensity that transcended species barriers. A connection forged through care, strengthened through separation, and now renewed through understanding. As they stepped onto the surface of Vega 9 together, not as researcher and subject, but as something approaching equals, Mira understood that their story had implications far beyond scientific discovery or defense protocols. They represented a new paradigm. Not observation from a distance, but engagement through connection. Not control through classification, but security through understanding. The Arcturian Observation Consortium would continue its work throughout the galaxy. But with a fundamental difference, they would no longer merely watch as detached observers. They would engage, connect, and learn, recognizing that true knowledge comes not from categorization, but from relationship. And it had all begun with a simple act of compassion. A woman feeding a predator while others watched and failed to understand.